I didn't know who he was the first time I saw him standing at the back of the room. Among the crowd of well-dressed parents and cheering graduates, he wore an old faded military jacket and stood still like a shadow. No one had invited him, no one welcomed him. And when a young staff member stopped him and said, "This area is for families only," I saw him pull out a folded piece of paper with a trembling hand. Just a few scribbled lines, but they hit me like a punch to the chest. "My son is graduating today. He told me to sit in the front row." They didn't let him in. They said he didn't have a ticket. They didn't know who he was. They didn't know. He was the reason that boy lived long enough to see this day. And they had no idea that in just a few moments, 6 men were going to rise to their feet. Without a word, without being asked. Just stand. Because that kind of order never stops carrying. Wait that morning at Griffin Academy in Virginia. The air was thick with pride and anticipation as families gathered to witness their children's graduation. Margaret Ellis, a silver-haired single mother with kind eyes and a quiet strength, had arrived early to claim a good seat in the 5th row, close to the stage. In her hands, she clutched the ceremony program, where her son, Ethan Ellis, was, listed in bold under the dean's list, proof to her that all the sacrifices had been worth it. As laughter and soft music filled the auditorium and the last few guests hurried in, a man quietly entered through the emergency exit at the CIO back of the room. He wore an old Marine Corps jacket, the kind faded by time and memories, his face carved with deep lines that told of more than just age. He moved slowly toward the VIP seating area, holding a small, folded scrap of paper. A young woman with headphones stepped in his path and said politely but firmly, "This area is reserved for family members only, sir." He didn't argue. He didn't speak. He simply stood there in silence, eyes scanning the rows ahead, as if searching for something, or someone familiar. The red glow of the exit sign bathed him in light, casting a long shadow across the polished floor. No one noticed him. No one welcomed him, except Margaret. She couldn't explain why, but something about the man unsettled her. She watched him intently, her breath catching when she spotted a faint scar on his left wrist, a clean, narrow line just below his sleeve. She had seen that scar before, in a photo hanging in the dean's office, a black and white military portrait of a young Marine, his left arm hastily bandaged, standing at the center of a unit somewhere in Afghanistan. That man was Jack Callahan, the commanding officer who had lost his arm during an ambush in Kunduz back in 2006. And now here he was, wearing a prosthetic hidden beneath his coat, standing alone, unrecognized. But it wasn't the scar that made Margaret's heart skip. It was the writing on the crumpled piece of paper in his hand. As he shifted slightly, she caught a glimpse of the shaky handwriting. "My son is graduating today. He said I should sit in the front." Ethan Ellis stood tall in his cap and gown, unaware that the man lingering silently at the back of the auditorium was his biological father, a former Marine who had vanished from his life years ago, swallowed by the weight of war and the silence that followed. Jack Callahan had left without goodbye, broken in ways no one could see. But today he returned for one reason only, to fulfill a promise he had whispered long ago. "I'll be there when you graduate, son." The ceremony unfolded with predictable pomp, proud families leaning forward in their seats, snapping photos and dabbing their eyes. Then came the moment for the valedictorian speech, delivered by none other than the principal's son, a polished young man in a custom-fitted suit, whose smile came too easily and whose eyes scanned the room like he owned it. He stepped up to the microphone and smirked. "I just want to thank all the picture-perfect families sitting up front," he said with a wink, "for showing us what real support looks like." The crowd chuckled politely, but the words landed like a punch to the gut for those in the 5th row, the row where 6 weathered men sat in solemn silence, veterans, brothers in arms, men who had seen things no college auditorium could ever imagine. Jack Callahan stood apart, his shoulders tense. He didn't flinch, but his jaw clenched tightly. Luis, one of the 6, a man whose life Jack had once saved by dragging him through enemy fire in the chaos of Helmand, narrowed his eyes at the speaker, his fingers curled slightly, as though holding back a reflex to stand, to shout, to correct this boy's ignorance. But he didn't move. None of them did, because they weren't here for applause. They were here for something bigger, and they were waiting for the right moment to be seen. 2 security guards approached Jack Callahan where he stood. One of them leaned in slightly, speaking in a firm but quiet tone. "Sir, this area is restricted to registered guests only. We'll have to ask you to leave." Jack didn't respond. He didn't move, except to slowly reach into his worn-out jacket and pull out a small, folded piece of paper, creased and faded from being opened too many times. He held it out wordlessly, as if it spoke for him. From the 5th row, Margaret Ellis squinted and caught sight of the scrawled message written in blue ink. "Dad, I want you to sit in the front row." There was a brief silence. Then the guard's voice returned, colder this time. "No invitation, no seat. Please cooperate." Jack exhaled lightly, not resisting, only nodding as he remained still. But behind the scene, something else was quietly unfolding. One of the 2 guards, the younger one, narrowed his eyes and studied Jack's face carefully. He leaned into his radio and whispered, "We're making a mistake. That's Callahan, the sergeant from Kunduz." But the reply through the earpiece cut him off, sharp and detached. "Follow protocol. No exceptions." From the 5th row, Luis, one of the men Jack had once pulled from a firefight, gripped the armrest of his seat until his knuckles turned white. The veins in his neck bulged, his chest heaved, and his eyes stayed locked on the scene unfolding up front. He didn't stand, didn't speak, but in his eyes, and in the eyes of the 5 other silent veterans beside him, something was beginning to boil. The kind of heat they hadn't felt since the battlefield. They knew something was about to happen, and this time, none of them would sit still for much longer. Suddenly, 6 men stood up, as if by instinct and in perfect unison. They didn't shout or cause a scene. It was a series of deliberate, solemn movements. Leading them was Tyson Briggs, who stepped forward and pulled a silver and gold badge shaped like a bird and an anchor from inside his jacket, the honored symbol of a Navy SEAL. "He is not leaving this place," Tyson said, his voice carrying the weight of a command. "He's the man who led us through Fallujah alive." The entire auditorium fell silent, as if doused with cold water. A security guard nearby trembled as he looked at the badge and took a step back, unwilling to speak. The girl with the headset stammered, I didn't know." But it was too late. Dozens of people turned their heads, phones and cameras aimed at the elderly soldier being forced out of his seat. Then, a single clap rang out, soft at first, but soon spreading into a thunderous applause that filled the entire hall. Jack Callahan did not walk to the front row like a conqueror. He simply nodded quietly to the 6 soldiers beside him. A silent thank you. But what happened next shook the entire auditorium. Ethan, his son, stepped onto the stage, paused, and did not immediately accept his diploma. He turned to the microphone, his voice firm. "I cannot accept my diploma if the man who made it possible for me to be here today is not sitting in his rightful place." Ethan pointed toward the audience. "That man is my father, the one who lost everything so I could have this day." The entire faculty rose and applauded. A veteran professor shed tears of emotion. The girl who had initially blocked Jack now removed her headset and gently set down her clipboard. The 6 Navy SEALs solemnly rose and took their seats in the honorary row beside him. Margaret stood up, walked over, and took his hand with deep understanding. Not everyone is a biological father, but not everyone has the courage to come back. If you've been moved by Jack's story and want to hear more powerful, real-life tales of courage, sacrifice, and resilience from veterans and everyday heroes, don't forget to subscribe to Old Soldier Story. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode. Join our community where every story honors those who served and inspires us all. Thank you for listening. Your support means the world.